you can either blame and punish or you can learn and improve, but you don't get to do both. And I'm pretty excited about it because this is like maybe the third best class of my entire life. It's in an auditorium. I'm in Calgary. What could be better? I mean, it was perfect. The air smelled good. I looked good. Everybody was dressed in the audience. It was perfect, right? And this voice with a very cartoon-like, and I mean this respectfully, French accent, which I will not even attempt to do, says to me from the back of the room, that's probably always true, but sometimes you have to fire the keeper. Kind of throw down on the guy and I say, I'm sorry, what did you just say? And he said, I've been in a position where I've had to learn and discipline at the same time. I had to fire the keeper. And I said, I don't know what a keeper is. Can you give me more information? And remember, this guy's, it's all this kind of heavy, like more, not Montrealish, more cartoony, like if, imagine Pepe Le Pew was having this argument with, like that kind of French, right? And I said, where are you from? And he said, I'm the managing director of the Calgary Zoo. Now I'm interested. Beforehand, I'll just be honest with you guys, I was teaching a class in an auditorium in Calgary, and at 4 o'clock I was done. You know what I mean? But now, I got a zoo guy. I said, well, tell me more, because there's clearly context to your comment, because you're motivated by this. And in fact, sir, you sound a tiny bit angry. And he said, I'm not angry, but I'm very persistent. Remember, Pepe Le Pew saying this to me. And he says these words. Now, I want you to follow along with me because it's really important. He says, you probably don't know this, but we've had 3 gorilla escapes this season. And he says to me, like it's like everyone in the room should know this, the first time was actually good for business. And I said, yeah, that kind of makes sense. He said, we got a lot of press. He said, the second time, not as good for business. And he said, the third time was publicly embarrassing, and the board wanted action. So I terminated the gorilla keeper. And I said, okay, what'd you fix? Which is the same question that I ask lots of people. The great thing is it's also the same question that you ask people. Pepe Le Pew, of course you know that a gorilla container has to have gates that default to open. So I said exactly what you say. Well, of course I know that. I mean, who doesn't know that? That's like one of the first things you learn. Stove is hot, gorilla cages default to open. And he said the problem is in the winter, we don't get a lot of snow, but we get this kind of funky, dry, blowing around snow, which if you live in Denver, you know exactly what that snow is. And he says, and it gets in the gate solenoid, and so you'll pull the gate shut, and the gate will seem like it's locked. He said, the reason the gates default towards open is because a gorilla won't go to the outside containment area if a person's been in front of it. So we have a button we push and the gate flies open and the gorillas go out and, I don't know, gorilla stuff. And then he said, and what we learned when we did our investigation is that the gate appeared closed, but in fact it wasn't. And so we put a device on the gate that would assure us the solenoid was locked, and we put a light in the keeper's area to assure that the gate was secured. We built a feedback system of positive feedback to tell us that the gate was closed. And I said, so when did you do that? And he said, after the third time the gorilla escaped, and we terminated the keeper. The idea that you can get better or get even is not really a language we use, but it was definitely the language in that day, in that auditorium in Calgary, that the worker used. And what it did was really give us an opportunity to do two things. One is an immediate break, because one of the ways to cut tension is to just give them a little time to breathe. And two, to come back and talk about this balance that we all appreciate and work with. And one of our biggest challenges in the jobs we do, no matter where we do it, and no matter what industry, is that the emotional need to punish the guilty often is much more profound and powerful than the intellectual need to understand the conditions. And one of the things that I think is most amazing is that as our discussion went on, and we worked really hard collectively as a class to make this discussion as positive as possible, I think we made some inroads with the team of people that were invited. Because afterwards, the boss of Calgary Phillips Conoco came up to me and said, "Thank you. That was really important." I said, "Who were those people?" And he said, "Well, that was the senior leadership team at the Calgary Zoo." And he said, "We've been having a discussion, and I think this probably made a difference." The greatest thing about this story is the next time I went, the keeper had been reemployed. Now, why this is cool is really simple. Let's think, as Martha says, business imperative strategy, right? She just talked about it. I would suggest if you fire a keeper that's recovered the gorillas 3 times, you've terminated the most experienced urban gorilla finder person. That person should be traveling around consulting with other gorilla keepers. What was amazing is the zoo said, "Please come and be our guest." We're good at getting even. Ask Redonda. She told us the story of getting even. What we want to be good at is getting better. So if you want to change the world, you have to change the way people believe. So I think there's 3 things that all of us in this room share. And it's a part of this belief shift. And they're really simple. And for us, it's kind of normal. But for the rest of our organization, they're going to need some time to fundamentally understand this belief and accept it without a lot of proof. And the first thing is that people aren't the problem. They're the solution. And what's remarkable is once you get that communicated, it's crazy cool. I hate to say this because it's a little bit edgy, but once your senior leadership team figures out that their best resource are their people, they're already present, they understand the system, they're available 24/7, and they will give you feedback if you ask them, they don't go back. Because it's easier, better, quicker, and higher quality data than they've ever received before. Compliance focuses on people. It focuses on people behavior. And so it will have really effective short-term gain, but it's not very good at long-term sustainable improvement. And I can prove it to you guys, because I'm going to say something that you need to go back to your site and say out loud because you'll be a hero. And that is, we live in a world where more rules do not equate into more safety. They just don't. You could have 1,000 rules, but it's still the same level of safety. And we learned quickly that design is about the system. Andy talked about design. That's what the system supports. That's how you make the system stronger, better, more reliable, more flexible. What was missing was what this room represents. And that's the relationship between work and the worker. And what's amazing is when we started looking at how workers interface with work in a highly complex, adaptive world filled with variability, what we learned is that workers actually hold the system together. And usually it's kind of a crappy, wonky, pretty fragile, goofy system that over time has become unnecessarily complex. I just described most of our systems, thank you, right? But those people are the people that hold it together. And so this became really exciting because it gave us an entirely new set of questions which allowed us to create a new set of beliefs. Risk is dynamic, it's ever present, it's the fundamental premise of the work. It's not that we can remove risk, it's that we can add control. And we started really playing with this idea, and it became super interesting. Now, it goes on from here, because what worries me and what a lot of people in this room are thinking about is that really safe organizations still kill people. The safest organizations in the world have catastrophic loss. Now, I'll just say this. We're not here to talk about this today, but we can talk about it a bunch. Is one of the biggest learnings that the community of human and organizational learning offers the world is this next phrase. The things that injure people are not the same things that kill people. And so when we realized that fatalities weren't a function of a failure to prevent, they were a function of a failure to control, suddenly it gave birth to a bunch of new ideas that you're hearing about all the time. The energy wheel came back. I mean, it's been around for 80 years, and now it's back in the conversation because they're starting to understand that the energy part of that problem is the normal part. It's not even the interesting part. Risk is what people do. It's the way they handle risk that make them different. And that really led us to the idea of redefining safety. Safety is not the absence of accidents. It's the presence of capacity. The productive safety, pre-jobs. Hazard ID, right? Planning. We're good when we plan. We're great when we plan. Training and mentoring. Well, that seems like it's productive, right? That moves us forward. The Start Safe program that you've heard about or that exists in your organization. It's funny, stop work, probably reductive. Start Safe, probably productive. You see the difference? It's right there. Assurance programs, not audit programs, but assurance programs. You're not seeking deviation, you're actually reinforcing what you want to see is in the field. Accountability is an act of clarification. I cannot tell you guys more how my definition of accountability changed because of a lady named Jenny Long. If you've not read her book on accountability, get it. And what Jenny Long looked me in the eye one day and said, she just looked me in the eye like she knew what she was talking about, and she said, Todd, accountability is an act of clarity, not an act of discipline. Great is in the agency of others. Write that down, because your homework is, what does that mean? You become great when you facilitate other people's opportunity to be greater. Get caught making the world a safer place. You make a difference.